Keanu Reeves stood at the entrance of his driveway, keys dangling in his hand. Exhausted after a long day on set, the sun was slipping behind the hills, washing the sky in strokes of orange and gold. The world seemed peaceful, like it often does, just before life chooses to break your heart open. His home, hidden behind tall hedges and whispering pines, always felt like a safe space, a retreat from the noise and demands of fame. But that evening, something felt off. Keanu felt a tug in his chest, that strange sixth sense he'd learned never to ignore. As he stepped closer to his house, he heard a faint, muffled sound. He paused. Was it an animal? Maybe a stray cat trapped somewhere. He tilted his head, listening. More closely. No, it was not a cat. It sounded like a baby crying. Keanu frowned, scanning his front yard. The sound wasn't coming from the house. It was coming from the driveway. He walked towards the old, abandoned SUV that had been parked there for months. He'd meant to get it towed but kept forgetting. As he drew closer, the sound became clearer and unmistakable. Desperate infant's cry. The kind that claws at your heart. His pulse quickened. He reached the car and peered through the tinted window. There, strapped helplessly in a car seat, was a tiny baby, red-faced and sobbing, gasping for air in the suffocating heat trapped inside the vehicle. Keanu's single quotes' breath caught. His mind raced. How long had the baby been in there? Who would leave a child like this? He grabbed the door handle and yanked, but it was locked. He knocked on the window, hoping the baby would calm at his face. But the little one only screamed louder, cheeks slick with sweat. Panic surged through Keanu, but he forced himself to stay calm. He looked around. There was no one on the street. The air was thick and warm. The car was practically an oven. He knew every second counted. His phone was inside the house. He could run and get it, call for help. But something inside him whispered there was no time for that. Keanu remembered a story he'd read once about a baby who died in a locked car within minutes. He couldn't let that happen. He scanned the ground for something, anything to break the window. He found a heavy garden rock near the walkway. His fingers trembled as he grabbed it. He spoke to the baby through the glass. "It's okay, little one. I got you. I promise I got you." His voice cracked as he lifted the rock, aimed for the corner of the window, and swung. The glass shattered, spraying shards onto the seat. The baby startled but kept crying, gasping for breath. Keanu reached in carefully, avoiding the jagged edges, and unlocked the door. He unbuckled the straps with shaking hands. Heart hammering in his chest, he cradled the baby in his arms, feeling the tiny body burning with heat. The baby's clothes were drenched in sweat, skin flushed, eyelids drooping. Keanu didn't think twice. He carried the child to his porch, settled on the steps, and held the baby against his chest. He whispered soothing words, rocking back and forth. He ran his hand over the baby's forehead, damp with sweat. "Hang on, buddy, just hang on. You're safe now, you're safe." He looked around again, praying someone would appear, someone who knew this baby, someone to explain how this child had ended up alone, dying in an old SUV in his driveway. But there was no one. Keanu's single quotes' mind spun with questions. Was this an accident? A cruel trick? Was someone trying to hurt him through this child? But none of that mattered now. All that mattered was keeping this baby alive. He knew he had to cool the child down. He dashed inside, grabbed a clean towel and a bottle of water. He soaked the towel, returned to the baby, and dabbed the cool cloth against the tiny arms and forehead. The baby's cries softened to weak whimpers, but the eyes still rolled back, threatening to close forever. Keanu's voice grew more desperate. "Stay with me. Please stay with me." He didn't care if he looked foolish. He began to hum softly, an old lullaby his mother used to sing to him when nightmares came. The baby's eyelids fluttered. A small hand gripped his finger. It was enough to give Keanu hope. Just then, a noise made him jump. He looked up to see a young woman standing at the end of his driveway, her face pale, eyes wide with terror. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. She stumbled closer, clutching her hands together. Is he okay?" she whispered, voice cracking. Keanu stared at her. "Do you know this baby?" She nodded, tears welling up. "He's mine. Please, Is he? Her legs buckled. Keanu shifted the baby to one arm and reached out, steadying her. Sit down. Breathe. Tell me what happened. The woman sank to the steps beside him, sobbing. I didn't know what else to do. I thought someone would find him faster. I've been watching from the street for hours. I was so scared. I didn't mean for him to get so hot. Keanu's brows were upon. Why would you leave him like that? She wiped her eyes with trembling hands. I'm homeless. I didn't want to abandon him. But I'm not safe. I heard people say you're kind. I thought if I left him here, maybe you'd find him. I didn't want him to die with me. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Keanu's heart cracked open at her words. He looked down at the baby, who was breathing more steadily now, and then at the woman beside him, broken and desperate. He didn't have all the answers, but he knew one thing: no one should feel so hopeless that they have to leave their baby in a car. Praying a stranger will save them. You did the right thing by coming back, he said softly. What's his name? The woman choked out a tiny smile. Milo. His name is Milo. Keanu brushed his thumb over Milo's damp hair. Hey, Milo, you're gonna be okay. I promise you, you're gonna be okay. He looked at the woman. And you're gonna be okay too. You're not alone now. She stared at him, eyes wide with disbelief. Why would you help us? Keanu shrugged, tears pricking his eyes. Because someone has to, and today, that someone is me. He knew in that moment his life was about to change. He didn't know how yet, but as he held baby Milo close to his chest, he felt an old emptiness inside him begin to heal. He would not let this child slip away. He would not let this mother feel hopeless again. And he had no idea that saving this baby would lead him into a battle bigger than anything he'd ever faced on the silver screen. But for now, all that mattered was that Milo was breathing. The stars were coming out overhead, and there was a tiny heartbeat pressed against his. Keanu Reeves came home and found a baby dying in a locked SUV. His next move saved a life, but this was only the beginning of a journey that would test every part of his soul and show the world that even the smallest act of kindness can create ripples that change everything. Keanu didn't sleep at all. That night, he sat on the porch with baby Milo cradled against his chest while the baby's mother, whose name was Emily, dozed off in exhaustion on the steps beside him. The moon rose and fell behind drifting clouds, painting silver lines across the yard. Every time Milo let out a little whimper, Keanu's heart jumped into his throat. He kept thinking about what would have happened if he'd arrived just a few minutes later. He thought about the stories he'd read of babies who never made it out of locked cars. The thought made his chest tighten with a fear he couldn't shake off. When the sky began to lighten with the first hints of dawn, Keanu made a decision. He gently nudged Emily awake. She blinked up at him, her face puffy from crying, hair tangled, eyes still carrying that raw panic. Emily, he said softly, we need to take Milo to a doctor. We have to make sure he's really okay. Emily nodded, rubbing her eyes. I don't have money. Keanu offered her a reassuring smile. Don't worry about that. Just come with me. He wrapped Milo in a light blanket and settled him into his car seat, one that wasn't locked inside an abandoned SUV this time. Emily sat beside him in the back, her fingers brushing over her son's tiny hand again and again, as if she still couldn't believe he was alive. Keanu drove them to the nearest urgent care clinic just as it opened its doors. The receptionist recognized him immediately, but didn't say anything. Sensing the gravity of the moment, the doctor on call, an older man with gentle eyes, checked Milo thoroughly. After what felt like an eternity, he gave Keanu and Emily a tired smile. He's dehydrated, but stable now. You did the right thing breaking that window. You saved him. Emily burst into tears. Keanu sat beside her, his hand on her back, feeling how fragile she was. Like a paper bird about to tear in two. You should take him to a pediatrician later today. Just for a follow-up, the doctor continued. But he'll be okay. Those words lifted something heavy from Keanu's chest. He thanked the doctor, then looked at Emily. Do you have somewhere to stay tonight? She flinched, then looked away. I was living in my car. I don't anymore. They towed it last week. Keanu's throat tightened. He thought about all the times he'd passed people sleeping on benches, under bridges, behind alleys, people who were invisible to the rest of the world until tragedy forced everyone to look. And now, here was this young mother who'd trusted him with her baby's life. "Come home with me," he said suddenly. The words out before he could overthink them. Emily's eyes widened. "I can't do that. You don't even know me. You trust me enough to leave Milo with me," he said softly. "Trust me now. You and your baby deserve more than sleeping on a sidewalk." Emily pressed her hand to her mouth, trying to hold back a fresh wave of tears. She wanted to refuse. He could see it. Pride was a heavy thing, but love for her baby was heavier. In the end, she just nodded. Keanu didn't have a guest room ready for a mother and her baby, but that didn't matter. He gave Emily his own bedroom while he settled into a spare room that hadn't been used in years. He found a crib online and had it delivered within hours. He stocked the fridge with baby formula and soft fruit for Emily. Through it all, he couldn't shake this sense of something bigger forming around him. The weight of it settled on his shoulders, but didn't crush him. It made him stand taller somehow. For the first time in years, his house felt alive. He heard Milo's little coos and cries echoing through the hallway. He heard Emily's footsteps in the kitchen as she made tea and warmed bottles. The sound of life. But kindness, he knew, always comes with questions, and questions soon arrived. On the third day, Keanu stepped outside to find two reporters parked at the end of his driveway. They'd heard whispers someone had tipped them off about the shattered SUV window, about the baby, about a woman seen at his house. The headlines practically wrote themselves. One of the reporters, a young woman with a microphone trembling in her hand, called out, "Mr. Reeves, is it true you rescued an abandoned baby? Who is the woman staying with you? Is she your girlfriend? Is the baby yours?" Keanu's jaw tightened. He hated the way rumors could twist a simple act of kindness into gossip. He walked up to the reporters, calm but firm. "There's nothing to talk about," he said. "A child needed help, that's all. Please respect their privacy." But he knew that wasn't how it worked. The story would spread, whether he wanted it or not. He found Emily later, sitting on the couch with Milo on her lap, watching the local news flash pictures of his driveway. "They're going to ruin everything, aren't they?" Emily whispered. Keanu sat beside her, brushing a stray curl from her face. "No, they don't get to ruin this. They don't get to tell your story for you when you're ready. You'll tell it yourself, on your terms." Emily looked at him, a tear slipping down her cheek. "Why do you care so much?" Keanu thought about all the nights he'd spent alone, wondering if anyone would have cared if he disappeared. He thought about the kindness strangers had once shown him when he was nothing but a boy, with holes in his shoes and a heart full of grief. "Because when you've been where I've been," he said softly, "you learn that everyone deserves someone who cares." The next morning, Keanu sat with his mug of coffee, watching Milo roll around on a blanket on the living room floor. Emily was humming softly, folding tiny clothes she'd washed by hand. It looked so normal, so ordinary, yet he knew this fragile piece was balanced on the edge of something bigger. Because when you save someone's life, you don't always know what that life will bring with it. And in the shadows beyond the safety of his home, someone was watching. Someone who knew who Milo really was. Someone who was waiting for the right moment to come knocking on Keanu Reeves' door, ready to shatter everything. Keanu had no idea yet that saving Milo was only the first step in a storm that would test his strength, his trust, and his belief in the goodness of people. But for now, he sipped his coffee, smiling at the sound of a baby's laughter, a sound that reminded him that every breath saved was worth every risk. The days that followed seemed calm on the surface. Keanu fell into a new routine. Every morning he brewed coffee while Emily made bottles for Milo. They sat together in the kitchen, sometimes in silence, sometimes laughing about the way Milo tried to chew on his own foot. It felt like a small family, something Keanu hadn't felt in so long that he almost forgot what it meant. But the quiet moments were always shadowed by a question that pressed at the edges of his mind. Who was Emily really running from? One night, after Milo had finally fallen asleep, Keanu found Emily sitting outside on the back porch, The moon was full above them, silvering the garden. She was hugging her knees to her chest, her hair falling over her face. He sat down next to her, the old wood creaking under their weight. For a long while, neither of them spoke. Finally, Keanu said softly, "You don't have to tell me everything, but I want you to know that I'm here for you. I'm not going to judge you." Emily let out a shaky breath. "It's not just me I'm scared for. It's Milo." She lifted her head, and he could see the fear in her eyes, the exhaustion that went deeper than no sleep could explain. "His father," she whispered. "He's dangerous, Keanu. I didn't know it at first. I thought he was just troubled. He'd get angry sometimes, but then he'd apologize. You know how it goes. But when I told him I was pregnant, he changed." Keanu felt a cold knot form in his stomach. He stayed quiet, letting her speak. "He didn't want Milo. He wanted me to get rid of him. When I refused, he started following me, showing up at my work, shouting at me in the street. Then one night, he hit me, and I knew I had to run. I took what little money I had and disappeared before he could find us again." Her voice broke on the last word, and she buried her face in her hands. Keanu's heart ached for her. He reached out, gently rubbing her back. "You did the right thing," he said quietly. "You protected your son. You're stronger than you think." Emily let out a humorless laugh. "Strong? I left him in a car. I'm a terrible mother." "No," Keanu said, his voice firm now. "You were desperate and scared. You came back for him. You didn't give up. That's what matters." She looked at him, her eyes glassy in the moonlight. "He's going to find us. You don't know him. He won't stop." Keanu's mind was already turning, working through the possibilities. "Then we make sure he doesn't." The next morning, Keanu made some calls. He didn't trust the press, but he had friends, real friends, who could help without making a spectacle of it. He called a lawyer he'd worked with for years, a quiet man named Alan who'd helped him navigate the ugliest corners of fame. He explained everything, leaving nothing out. Alan listened without interrupting. When Keanu finished, Alan let out a low sigh. "This could get messy. You'll need to be careful." "Keanu, restraining orders don't always stop people like him." "I don't care about me," Keanu said. "I care about Emily and Milo." Alan promised to start working on it immediately. He also connected Keanu with a security expert, someone who could install cameras, check the house for vulnerabilities, make sure they were ready for anything. Keanu tried to keep it from Emily, not wanting to add to her worry, but she noticed the strange men in suits walking around the yard, the new locks being installed, the subtle changes that said they were preparing for war. "You shouldn't have to do this for us," she told him one evening as they watched Milo sleep. Keanu shook his head. "It's not about what I have to do. It's about what I want to do. I want you both to be safe. That's all that matters." Emily nodded but said nothing more. She was holding something back. He could feel it, but he didn't push. She needed time. Trust was a fragile thing, and she'd already given him more of it than anyone else had. But secrets have a way of breaking free. One rainy night, while Keanu was in the garage fixing a loose light fixture, he heard a sound that made his blood run cold. Milo screaming, not the usual hungry cry, but a shriek of pure terror. He dropped the wrench and ran into the house. He found Emily standing in the living room, pale as a ghost, clutching Milo to her chest. The front door was wide open. The wind howled through it, spraying rain onto the hardwood floor. "What happened?" Keanu demanded, closing the door and locking it behind him. Emily looked at him, shaking so badly she could barely hold the baby. "He was here." Keanu's heart pounded in his ears. "Who? Milo's father?" she whispered. "I saw him outside. He was watching us through the window. He was so close. I could feel him." Keanu scanned the shadows beyond the windows but saw nothing. Still, he felt eyes on him, like a predator watching its prey. "We're calling the police," he said. Emily grabbed his arm. "No, please, if you call them, he'll know we're scared. He'll find another way." Keanu's jaw clenched. "Then what do we do?" She looked at Milo, who was sobbing against her shoulder. "We run." Keanu stared at her. "Thunder rumbling outside. And go where? You can't run forever, Emily. You said it yourself, he won't stop." She sank onto the couch, cradling Milo tighter. "Then what do we do, Keanu?" Tell me what to do. Keanu sat down next to her, putting a hand on her back. His mind raced, pieces clicking together. We don't run, he said finally. We fight back, but not with fists, with truth. You're going to tell your story, Emily. You're going to let the world know who he really is. If he wants to hide in the shadows, we'll drag him into the light. Emily's eyes widened. I can't let people know. He's counting on your silence, Keanu said gently. People like him thrive in the dark. We don't let him hide there anymore. Emily's tears fell onto Milo's tiny hand. She looked at Keanu, searching for something in his face. Do you really think people will care? She asked. Keanu nodded. Yes, because you matter, Emily. And so does Milo. You deserve to be safe. And he deserves to grow up without fear. He didn't know then how right or how dangerous those words would be. Because sometimes, when you shine a light on a monster, it only makes the monster angrier. And as Emily finally agreed to tell her story, miles away in the shadows, a man watched them through a rain-spattered window, his breath fogging up the glass, and he whispered to himself, soon. The man chuckled. You know exactly who I am, and you know she's mine, inside. Emily pulled Milo tighter to her chest. She could hear every word. You're not taking her anywhere, Keanu said through the door, his voice calm. Go away before you regret it. Oh, you think you can stop me? You think your cameras and your fancy words change anything? She's weak. She always comes back. Keanu's hands gripped the bat so tight his knuckles went white. He felt rage simmering beneath his ribs, but he forced himself to stay calm. Not this time. We'll see about that. The man leaned close to the door. You think you're her savior? You're nothing. When I'm done with you, she'll crawl back to me on her knees. Keanu's blood ran cold. He could hear Milo crying now, Emily whispering shh like a prayer. Leave before I call the police, Keanu said, voice low, shaking with controlled anger. The man laughed again, a sound that made Keanu's skin crawl. Call them. They can't watch you forever. Then silence, footsteps fading, the rustle of bushes. When Keanu swung open the door, there was no one there, just the whisper of the night wind. That night, Keanu sat on the couch, Emily on one side. Milo curled in her arms. They didn't speak much. There was nothing left to say. The fear was raw and real now, pressing in around them like the darkness. Outside the window, Keanu knew the man wouldn't stay in the shadows much longer. He was growing bolder. The threats weren't enough anymore. He wanted to hurt them, or worse, drag them back to the nightmare they'd escaped. But Keanu also knew something else. The man had made a mistake. He'd stepped out of the shadows. He'd shown himself. Now, there were cameras. Now, there were witnesses. Now, the world was watching. And so was Keanu. The next day, Keanu did something no one expected. He called a press conference on his own front lawn. Reporters gathered behind ropes. Cameras clicking, microphones pushed forward. Emily stayed inside with Milo, peeking through the window. Keanu stood there, calm, steady, the same way he did when he stepped onto a movie set. Except this was real, and the stakes were higher than any scene he'd ever filmed. Some of you know why. You're here, he began, his voice clear. Some of you think this is a story about a woman and a baby I saved, but it's not. It's a story about what happens when we refuse to look away, when we say, enough, when we stand up for each other, even if it costs us something. He paused, letting his words sink in. Flashes from cameras flickered like lightning. This man thinks he owns Emily. He thinks threats and fear will keep her silent. But she's not alone anymore. She has me. She has you. And she has every single person who believes that no one deserves to live in fear. He looked directly at the cameras, his eyes fierce. So if you're watching this, if you're the man who thinks he owns her, hear me now. She's not yours. She never was. She's free, and she's never going back. The crowd went quiet. No one dared ask questions. There was nothing left to ask. That night, inside the house, Keanu held Milo in his arms while Emily leaned her head against his shoulder. The baby giggled and reached for Keanu's beard, tugging at it with tiny fingers. For a moment, it felt like the world was right. But outside, beyond the gate, headlights flickered in the darkness. An engine idled. A figure watched the house, his eyes sharp and hungry. He wasn't going to back down. Not yet. The fight was coming, and this time, it would not be at the door, it would be inside, where the truth was raw and the stakes were life and death. Keanu knew he wasn't ready, but he also knew he didn't have a choice. He had a promise to keep, and a life to protect, no matter what it cost him. The night air was too quiet. The kind of quiet that doesn't feel peaceful but tense, like the world was holding its breath for something terrible to happen. Keanu sat awake on the living room couch, his hand wrapped around a warm mug of tea he wasn't drinking. Emily sat across from him, Milo asleep in her arms, his tiny hand gripping the collar of her shirt. Her eyes were red but dry. She had cried so much there were no tears left. The security cameras outside blinked their small red lights. The police patrol car was parked beyond the gate, but everyone knew the thin line between safety and danger could break at any moment. The man who called himself Milo's father was out there somewhere, and Keanu knew he was coming. He could feel it. "You should get some sleep," Keanu said softly. Emily shook her head. "I can't." Keanu leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "We'll be ready. You're not alone." Emily looked at him, her voice barely a whisper. "Why do you care so much, Keanu? You could have called the police that night and been done with us, but you didn't." Keanu stared into his cup, searching for an answer that had been growing inside him since the first moment he heard Milo's cry through the locked SUV window. "Because I was you once," he said finally. "Lost, alone. I know what it feels like when no one comes. So when I heard him, when I saw you, I promised myself you'd never feel that again. Not if I could help it." Emily closed her eyes. She didn't say thank you because thank you felt too small. Instead, she stood and gently placed Milo in Keanu's arms. The baby stirred but didn't wake. Keanu felt the tiny heartbeat against his chest, a reminder of why he couldn't let fear win. Hours passed. Midnight came and went. The wind rattled the trees outside. Milo's soft breathing was the only thing that made the silence bearable. Then came the noise, a sharp metallic click at the front door. Keanu tensed. He laid Milo back in Emily's arms, pressing a finger to his lips to keep her quiet. He picked up the baseball bat from the corner and moved to the hallway, his feet silent on the floorboards. He saw the doorknob twist, then stop. Shadows moved behind the frosted glass. He didn't shout. He didn't make a sound. He waited, heart pounding in his ears. The lock clicked open. The door eased inward. A man stepped through the threshold, tall, dark hoodie pulled low over his eyes. He smelled of cigarettes and sweat, the stink of someone who thought he owned the world. When his eyes met Keanu's, he smiled, an ugly, crooked thing. "Where is she?" the man hissed. Keanu didn't answer. He stepped forward, blocking the hallway. "Move," the man snapped. "She's mine. Give her to me, and maybe I'll let you walk away." Keanu felt something inside him break, not with fear, but with something deeper. Anger, protectiveness, love for a tiny life that had come into his world like a miracle. "She's not yours," Keanu said, voice calm, deadly soft. The man lunged. Keanu swung the bat. It connected with the man's arm with a sickening crack. The man howled in pain, but swung back, catching Keanu's jaw with a fist. Keanu staggered, but didn't fall. From the hallway, Emily's voice trembled. "Keanu, stay back." Keanu shouted. He gripped the bat tighter. The man grabbed for it, pulling them both off balance. They crashed into the coffee table. Glass shattered. Keanu's single quotes as shoulders slammed into the floor, but he held on to the bat. The man's hand went to his pocket, a flash of silver, a knife. Keanu kicked him hard in the chest, sending him sprawling backward, but the man scrambled up, knife raised, wild eyes shining in the darkness. "You can't keep her from me," he screamed. Keanu stood, chest heaving, blood trickling from a cut on his lip. "You'll never touch her again." He saw Emily behind the man, Milo still in her arms, her eyes wide. But in that moment, she wasn't just scared, she was furious. Something inside her had snapped, too. She screamed, "Get away from my son." The distraction was enough. Keanu charged. He slammed the man against the wall. The knife clattered to the floor. They struggled, fists flying, bodies slamming into the wall. Picture frames fell. Glass crunched under their shoes. The front door burst open. Two police officers stormed in, weapons drawn. They shouted commands Keanu barely heard. Within seconds, they had the man pinned face down, handcuffs clicking shut around his wrists. The man snarled over his shoulder at Emily. "This isn't over." But Emily stepped forward, her voice clear and steady for the first time. "Yes, it is." When the police took him away, the house fell silent again. But it was a different silence, not heavy with dread but lighter, like the first breath after nearly drowning. Keanu sat on the couch, blood on his lip, breathing hard. Emily sat beside him, Milo curled up between them. She looked at him, her voice trembling. "You didn't have to do any of this, you know." Keanu looked down at Milo's tiny face. "So calm now and sleep, so peaceful despite everything." "Yes, I did." The days after felt like waking from a bad dream. There were court hearings, restraining orders, interviews with the police. But Emily didn't face them alone anymore. Keanu went with her, sat in every waiting room, held Milo when she needed to speak. The headlines changed. They weren't just about the baby in the SUV anymore. They were about a woman who found her voice, a man who stood by her side, and a tiny baby who reminded the world that every life is worth saving. Weeks later, Keanu walked through his garden, Milo giggling on his shoulders. Emily followed behind, smiling, a real smile this time, soft and bright. The bruises in her eyes were fading, replaced by something stronger. "Do you think he'll ever come back?" she asked. Keanu looked out at the horizon, the setting, sun painting everything gold. "No," he said quietly, "and if he does, he won't find you here. He'll find us." Emily reached up, brushing her fingers over Milo's foot where it dangled against Keanu's chest. "We're safe now." Keanu nodded. "We're family now." The word felt strange but good on his tongue. Family. Not the kind you're born into. The kind you build when life breaks you and someone else chooses to help you stand again. As the sun dipped behind the trees, Milo squealed and tugged at Keanu's hair, making them both laugh. And in that simple sound, a baby's laughter echoing through a place that once felt so lonely, Keanu felt something heal inside him. He knew he would always remember the cry he heard from that locked SUV, the moment he chose to break the glass, the choice. That changed not just a baby's life, but his own. And he knew he would do it again, every single time.